The demands.
So what exactly are they demanding?
A person's remains.
Remains?
That's right. To be more accurate, cell specimens which contain the individual's genomic information.
Hearing this,
Cell
you'd think it was
specimens.
just a little bit
Why
of
would
the
they want
person's
that?
body.
The terrorists need them. You see, these next
But you'd be
generation
amazed how much
special
is actually
forces
left.
have been strengthened through gene therapy.
Strengthened?
You've heard of the Human Genome Project. They've been mapping the human genome, and they're nearly finished.
Didn't they
Following up on
finish
this
about
research,
2000?
the military has been working towards identifying those genes which are responsible for making effective soldiers.
There are genes that do that?
Yes. And using gene therapy, they're able to transplant those genes into regular soldiers.
I wouldn't think that would be
Gene
that
therapy.
easy.
I'll explain this part. With gene therapy, we can remove those genes which we know may lead to sickness or disease, and at the same time splice in genes with beneficial effects, such as resistance to cancer, for example.
In other words, we can overcome all sorts of genetic diseases, and at the same time add genetic characteristics as desired.
Okay. And so if you knew what genes were responsible for making the perfect soldier, you could implant them in the same way, right?
Yes, we could.
But it all depends on being able to isolate and identify those soldier genes.
And in order to do that, it's helpful if you can study the genomic information of one of the greatest soldiers ever.
Chuck Norris? I love how it just cuts off there. Genetic.
One of the greatest soldiers ever?
The man they call the greatest warrior of the 20th century.
Mr. T.
You don't mean Big Boss.
That's right. We've been working feverishly
Man,
to
he has an
identify the
nasty
genes
beard.
responsible for
Looks like
his
he just got out
incredible
of the shower or
combat skill. So far, we've discovered about 60 of the so-called soldier genes.
So his body was recovered after all.
Didn't
Yes,
Snake
and his
burn it
cells
to a
have remained
crisp?
frozen in a cryo chamber. His
Wouldn't that make it
genomic
even
information
worse?
is a priceless treasure to mankind.
Priceless to the military, perhaps.
His body was burned severely, but it was possible to restore his DNA profile from just a single strand of his hair.
You
You'd
people are
think
amazing.
that would be. You'd think
And then you're
that's
gonna
all they
transplant
had.
those genes into
But
soldiers?
it's not.
Yes. We'll use a process that I discovered called gene targeting. The strongest soldiers don't become what they are by acquiring their skills through training or experience.
Bullshit.
We now know that hereditary factors are far more crucial for creating superior soldiers.
Snake, we can't give them his body. It's potentially more dangerous than all the nuclear warheads on that island put together.
I hear the terrorists are
find
calling
that's
themselves
very
the
hard to
Sons of Big Boss.
The sons of Big Boss?
Sons of Naked Snake. That's why one of them has their shirt halfway open all the time. And why the other one doesn't actually wear a shirt.
Tell me about these next generation special forces.
They started out as an anti-terrorist special ops unit, made up of former members of biochem units, technical escort units, and the nuclear emergency search team.
That reminds
Their
me
purpose
of
was to respond to threats involving next-generation weapons of mass destruction, including NBC weapons.
Oh great,
Until
now a
they
television
were at it,
network
that
is
is.
involved in terrorism.
Who's they?
These guys didn't start out as regular army.
Looks like a pretty international group. Mercenaries?
Yeah, and it gets worse. Most of them were from a merc agency that I think you're familiar with. They were part of Big Boss's private guard. And after Big Boss went down, the military just bought out all their contracts.
Outer heaven.
After that, they were merged with our own VR unit, Force 21, and retrained. If you ask me, these so-called next-generation special forces should be called simulated soldiers. They have no real battle experience.
Video game players, huh?
Like yours
Don't
truly.
forget they've all been strengthened with gene therapy. They carry genes which make them excellent soldiers. Don't get careless just because they don't have much experience.
I thought using genetically modified soldiers was prohibited by international law.
Yes, but those are just declarations, not actual treaties.
The interesting
Screw the
thing
rules,
is that nearly
buddy.
every member of the unit conspired in this attack.
Look how it keeps ending at freaking cliffhanger-ish things. Reason for unanimous approval.
How could an entire unit be subverted to rebellion?
They're calling it a revolution.
Since they all went through the same gene therapy, they probably felt closer than brothers. They see the unit as their only family.
The sons of Big Boss. But if they were regular army, they must have been interviewed periodically by army counselors.
According to their files, they all got straight A's on their psychological tests. They all seemed like fine, upstanding, patriotic soldiers.
But they all took part in the uprising?
No. Several people didn't show up on the day of the exercise. That's why there was a resupply of troops.
Was there any sign recently that something might be wrong?
There was a report a month ago that they were acting strangely.
Apparently they consulted classified information about the soldier genes and performed their own gene therapy experiments.
They can do that even without you?
Well, our gene therapy process is almost completely automated. And besides that, they're all geniuses with IQs over 180.
What?
Even the existence of this genome army is a national secret of the highest order.
Oh, they deserve to accept
We've
that.
been hoping to investigate this thing quietly and deal with it behind closed doors.
Now it's time for Unit Foxhound.
High-tech Special Forces Unit Foxhound. Your former unit, and one that I was a commander of. An elite group combining firepower and expertise. They're every bit as good as when I was commanding them.
So they're still around.
There are 6 members of Foxhound involved in this terrorist activity.
Wow,
Psycho Mantis, with his powerful psychic abilities. Sniper Wolf, the beautiful and deadly sharpshooter.
Oh, he has to comment on how
Decoy Octopus, master of disguise.
Does anyone else think he kind of looks like Christopher
Raven,
Walken?
giant and shaman. And Revolver Ocelot, specialist in interrogation, and a formidable gunfighter.
Looks like a lovely bunch of folks. Too bad we'll be meeting under these circumstances.
And finally, in charge of them, Foxhound squad leader, Liquid Snake.
Liquid Snake?
Yes. And you're the only person who can stand against him.
You're the only one that can do it. That's just kind of sort of a cop-out excuse, isn't it? Whoa.
Liquid Snake. Liquid Snake. The man with the same code name as you.
Tell me what you know.
God, he's just
he fought in
fascinated by
the
a
Gulf
fucking
War as a
code
teenager,
name.
the youngest person in the SAS. His job was to track down and destroy mobile Scud missile launching platforms. You were there too, I believe. Didn't you infiltrate Western Iraq with a platoon of Green Berets?
I was just a kid myself back then.
The details are classified, but it seems that originally he penetrated the Middle East as a sleeper for the SIS.
He was a spy for the British Secret Intelligence Service?
But he never once showed his face in Century House.
Doesn't
he was taken prisoner in Iraq, and after that there was no trace of him for several years. After you retired, he was rescued and became a member of Foxhound.
I thought that by the time I left, they were no longer using code names.
I don't know his real name. That information is so highly classified that even I can't look at it.
That doesn't really make
Here's
much.
a photo
well, that
of
doesn't really say much, considering you don't really have a lot of information that you.
Pretty shocking, huh? His skin tone is different, but otherwise you two are exact duplicates.
I have a twin?
I don't know the details, but it seems so. That's why we really need you for this mission.
Why?
You're the only one who can beat him.
Bullshit!
Now that I've met
What the
you, I
fuck
know.
kind of a stupid excuse is that?
You've got something that he doesn't. I can see it in your eyes.
Why don't I find that thought more comforting?
You're the only one who could beat him. Why not just send in a fucking ragtag group of freaking like other guys that are like Snake? Probably more well trained for this sort of thing.
I need to borrow your scissors.
What are you going to do?
Don't worry, just gonna clean myself up a little.
You know, in the remake, they actually make him.
I don't want to be
his
mistaken for
haircut
the leader
look
of the terrorists.
pretty all right. You can't really tell with this one because it's super blocky, but his haircut looked all right in the remake. So I gotta wonder if it's just him with scissors. Did he take some sort of class